So really big deal in the news. I don't know if you watched it yesterday, but we crashed a fucking spaceship into a rock 6 million miles away. Did you see this?
I did. And even after you and I talked about it, my wife pointed it out to me, and I got to be the smart one. I was like, oh, I have already heard about this. It's really cool.
I did. I was immediately like texting our group chat, and I was just like, we decided in 2018 that we were going to fling a fucking rock into the air. And then we're like, okay, so we planned this. And then almost a year ago, we throw this rock, and it's, I can't coordinate dinner most days. And, I just was like, how did this come together? And so, I was sitting there last night, and the other thing that really got me was the camera technology. But nobody that, if you haven't watched this, by the way, like, make sure you guys go watch this. But like, it was amazing to me, like how much you got to see this actually come into the rock. And I was pretty blown away by the achievement of humankind to be able to, like I said, I think about me trying to throw a baseball from the outfield and hit a catcher, back in the day. And, I'm really bad at that. So the fact that we were able to do that, and somebody said that like it was the size of a like a go-kart hitting the pyramid of one of the pyramids.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, that's insanely impressive. Cause I'm pretty sure if I was in a go-kart, I could drive into a pyramid, but like there's a lot of room for correction there. And this, this thing's moving at what, 14,000 anyways, like we're getting off topic, but today we've got a good discussion. What are we talking about?
We are going to talk about the actual mission of what we're doing here, man. I think it's really, really cool. So, it's good to just introduce people who the hell we are and why we're here. So, I think we're going to talk about the Serial Progress Seeker mission. I'd think it would be fun to dig into that a little bit.
No, I dig that. So for anybody that has been paying attention lately, we've had this podcast for a while, but if you're paying attention, the format has changed a little bit lately, but kind of our mission really hasn't. So today we're going to talk about that. So today it's all about what is the mission of Serial Progress Seeker, and especially this podcast. Why are we doing this? Let's dive in. Let's do it.
All right, man, I got to tell you. So I've been thinking about this and contemplating a lot lately about what mission means to me. It's funny because you hit these points in your life, right, where you kind of just, I just so everyone knows, full disclosure, Ben, I just turned 40. So I've got my head wrapping around mission, and that's what's my mission in life? What's my mission in my career? What's my mission in relationships? It's just got me thinking a lot. And then of course, we're doing this awesome stuff at the Serial Progress Seeker podcast, and I'm focused so hard on our mission and what we're trying to do. And while, a lot of our friends and colleagues know the overall mission behind Serial Progress Seeker, there may be a lot of people that don't. So you and I have never been able to just sit down and have this conversation. So I'd love to just kind of pick your brain for a little bit and talk a little bit about, let's just start at the very beginning and just talk Serial Progress Seeker just in general. Where did this, just overall idea come from? And when did you first have it?
I think it's interesting when we're in our teenage years, we're trying to kind of figure out who we are in terms of like, okay, what do I want to maybe do for a living? Most of us miss that by a mile, myself included. And then we kind of go through school. If you go to college, you go do that. Your 20s are trying to figure out sort of this path. And for me, it was spending a lot of money and a lot of time in school, going down a path that was great for me, and I learned a lot, but it was not my ultimate profession. I don't think that exists anymore, by the way. I think that is a thing absolutely that our parents, had, but we don't. I don't think we have an ultimate profession anymore.
No, that's a really good point. Just in general, you could sidebar on that for a second. So that's something you've obviously thought about and felt for a long time now, right?
Yeah, I really do. I believe that our parents and their parents were very lucky in that, you could get a career and you could do a lot with a career for a long time, and that would be your thing.
Yeah.
That's not a luxury that we have in our generation. And I think that, what's very interesting, the generation that's maybe like 10, 20 years after us, so not even a full generation, necessarily, they don't have that luxury anymore. And I think that what we're sort of in this mode of right now is if you are somebody that is working right now, or you're getting ready to start working right now, you're kind of in this spot to where life is about what you can do to impact the planet and get paid for it. Now we may have like side jobs across the way, but like Serial Progress Seeker sort of was, it came out, and I actually did some research on this when you sort of were like, hey, well, let's do a pod on this. I was like, yeah, absolutely. I started doing some research as to where this came from, this brand in my head. And I actually traced it back to 2015, I believe what it was, like 2014, 2015.
Wow, I had no idea it was that old.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I didn't either, actually, until I actually looked back and I was like doing the fun Facebook search where you found the post by me. And I was like, where's the first time that I actually mentioned this? And it wasn't what we do now, but it was always this basic idea of, we're always trying to get better and do something a little better and become more complete versions of ourselves, or like more real versions of ourselves.
Yeah.
And Serial Progress Seeker was always sort of this vibe of like, how do I make money doing that? How does that become my career? Like, not just my hobby, but how does that become my career? And so, when I first came up with that thought, I traced it back, and I'm like, I definitely didn't have it figured out 100% then of what this was. But I remember there was this moment, and it was probably 4 or 5 years ago, where I was doing the thing that we do now a lot, and you and me do this all the time. It's like we come up with like a product, or we come up with a brand, and we dive into like Photoshop or Canva, and we're like, okay, let me make an ugly version of the logo before I have like a real designer go do it. So,
Yep.
You guys, our process is, anybody that's listening to this, our process is we'll throw together something ugly in like Canva, and then we'll go like, so what happened? I was in Canva, and I was putting together, I had the word Serial Progress Seeker in the font that you see today.
Wow.
And then I was like, okay, it needs something to represent these words. And I stumbled onto this, this kid with a phone and a backpack. And I'm like, that's it. Like, that is what my life has looked like for the last probably 6-7 years, is I have this business, and I really do carry it in a backpack. And it occurred to me at that moment, man, that I'm like, most people don't know that this is a possibility, because the vast majority of my friends right now, and this is probably 4 or 5 years ago, are still trying to have the life that their parents had.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I'm raising my hand. I was one of them. You know that. I was one of them. I totally agree.
And so we, it was starting to occur to me several years back, and I was definitely not the first person to catch on to this, but like, it started to occur to me that we don't live that life anymore. We very much live a life where we are always moving into something different. And most of my friends at this point are changing careers. If they're not changing full on careers, they're actually using what they went to school for or what they went to learn. It's changing drastically every 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And so I think that Serial Progress Seeker to me started off as I could have a business that moves with me anywhere that I go. And then it very quickly evolved into like, I had to think about this. I was like, what does that mean to me? And this is where we sort of get into this discussion today. But it came out of, it was just very much Serial Progress Seeker stuck in my head as something that I'm like, this is what this business is about. And how do we further define that? And we'll talk about that today.
Well, and I think it's so cool that you touch on that, because I think it makes perfect sense. I mean, essentially, your brand is the mission. The mission is the brand. And I think there are so many businesses and so many people out there that struggle marrying those two things. So tell me a little. So you obviously this was kind of it from the beginning for you. Was there anything in particular that led you to being able to marry those two, or did it something just kind of happen naturally? How did that process work?
So I worked very, very hard going through school to become a chiropractor, right? Like, my history. Like, I was a chiropractor, and when I was a chiropractor, I learned a lot about how to build businesses, pretty much from scratch.
Sure.
Very little startup cash. Like, how do you bootstrap a brick and mortar business?
Right.
And something happened along the way. I had a moment, and I remember laying in bed one night, and I was just like, oh no. It really hit me. I was reading, I believe, The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, and that's that's a book that a lot of people, when they read that, they have that oh no moment that I have royally fucked up my path. And so I'm reading this book, and I remember thinking, I don't have a real business as a chiropractor. I went to school for 8 years for a job. Like, every time I leave my practice and try to go on vacation, we make no money. We make very little money. I mean, even if I bring in another doctor, it's a very difficult thing with a chiropractor to switch doctors.
Sure.
Too. So very early on, the mission that I had in my head was, as I was sort of coming out of that gig and coming into this gig that, was very internet based, and, that's a whole story in itself. But as I was coming out of that gig, I remember just thinking, I don't want to create something that is only viable when I'm in the room. And I don't want to create something that is very much, I have to be in a location for it to happen. And that was really the thing. I remember, one of the first things that I did when I said, okay, what do I really want out of this business? And I think it's super important that, if you have a business, what do you want out of it? And the first thing that I wrote up on this little whiteboard that was above my desk was $400 a day. And in my head, that's what I wanted to make 5 days a week. And I did the math, and I'm like, my wife and I don't have to go to work anymore if that's what's coming in. No, we make a whole lot more than that now, but like that was the front of it. It was like, that was the goal. I didn't know how to get there. I really didn't. I didn't know how to get there. I had to like build a plan for that. But the first thing was like, if I did this, we would never have to leave our house if we didn't want to. Or if I was somewhere else and I wanted to work, I could do that. And I tell you what, there was a lot of baggage that was in my head about what a job was that I had to clear out for the next few years to actually achieve that. But that was the very beginning. It was just like, I had this need because I was in this clinic. There were days where I was just beat down and exhausted, and I had to go the next day. Otherwise, we weren't making any money.
Right.
And I realized that I didn't have a product. The product was me. And without me being present, I had it. So when I got to this business, and what the whole thing was about is, how do we have products that make money for us while we sleep, that make money no matter where we are, that make money when we're not showing up? And, and like I said, now keep in mind, do I still have to show up a lot? Do I love showing up? Sure. I mean, I'm doing a podcast, but this is stuff that I love. And it became of, how am I doing more of the things that I love while still powering this business? So,
well, and there's a certain sense too, that the product is still you at a granular level, but now you've got all these other people that you get to kind of bring along for the ride with you. And I think I think that speaks so much to who you are as a person, but also the mission behind Serial Progress Seeker. Such a big deal. Of course, it's one kid with a backpack and a phone, but how many people can I bring along with me to do that same thing and be part of my tribe,
Well, and I think that's it. It's like, there's so many people out there, and this is really the essence of it. There's so many people out there that have this skill. And maybe you're a personal trainer, maybe you're a dietitian, maybe you're somebody that knows how to shoot free throws really, really well. You have a skill that people want. Maybe you're a math tutor. Like, it's just something that really makes you special because it's an interest that you have.
Right.
The problem is most of us make money in a one-on-one setting when we have those skills, or a 1 in like 5 to 10 people setting. Where this really started to come together in my head was I have some skills, and how do I put those skills down into some sort of format that these skills can be passed to anybody on the planet? And that's it. How do I download my brain and what's in my head in a format that is easy for people to consume, that I can, put together a PDF, write it, I can talk with audio, or, I can do some video and show people these things that they can actually consume it without me having to be present. And then, how do I set up infrastructure for other people to help me do that? So it's a good, and that's the thing, is like, in our business, and this is the other side of it, is I don't want to have anybody that's on our team that has to be location based.
Yep.
They can be working from a backpack. They don't necessarily have to be present during certain hours either. Like, that's another, sort of perk of what we do, is we just get our job done.
Right.
And I have a real problem with businesses that don't absolutely require it. It's like, listen, the hospital, restaurants, you got to show up, you got to be there at certain hours. But there's so many businesses that I think that get so wrapped up in this hours of the week thing that they miss out on giving themselves a lot of freedom. And so, like I said, that was the big thing for me, is how do we do that? But at the same time, the thing that I really, what did you get put on here on this planet to do? The thing that I feel like I was put here on this planet to do is, once I figured it out, was to pass that along. show people, hey, this is what we're doing. Like, this is what we're really doing. And yes, I am focused on marketing and digital stuff, but like, no matter what you do, if you have a skill that you can pass on to somebody else, you can use the internet and all these fantastic tools that the internet has provided us to get those things out there. And guess what? People will pay you a lot of money to do that, a lot more money than you could make if you were just doing it in a very local setting. And so that's kind of what it all sort of came out to be.
Yeah, it's awesome because I think to this day, anyone that knows you and is familiar with your brand knows that it's still very much coming from that same sort of place. But talk a little bit about how's it progressed? How's it changed? I mean, obviously, I know technology's changed and things have updated and things like that. But what kind of things have changed and come down the pike that have made you kind of change your mission or your brand over the years to kind of keep up with that?
It's gotten so much easier. I mean, there's a lot more competition because it's gotten easier.
Sure.
So that's always the trade-off, right? Like the trade-off is when I first started, it was incredibly difficult to do everything I do now. Like building a web page was complicated. Like, back in, we don't think that this was complicated back in 2010, but it was complicated, right?
Absolutely.
And today, putting together a web page is not that hard. We think about like how we display videos. So like, you and me, we're sort of spoiled now. Like we get done recording this, we edit it down, we upload it to YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay. YouTube existed, but it wasn't like this.
Yeah.
And there's so like when we get done, we can transcribe audio automatically. Like there's a whole mess of services. I remember having to Photoshop sales pages together to get it to look a certain way. And now we've got Canva, we've got tools that do when you have copywriting, and it's like all these tools have really made it easier. When I first started, I was basically taking things in my head. I was writing them down and trying to format a PDF to look the right way. So I would literally open up a old school Microsoft Word document. I would type for 2 days. And then when I was done, I would do a few things to make it look good, export it as a PDF, and then put it up to where somebody could like buy it and then download it. It was extremely hard to take money back then. There was no Stripe. Like today, Stripe is a tool that we use all the time. And, that's something that connects to our bank account and it makes it easier for us to take credit cards. We had those tools then, but they were not easy to work with. And so, for me, it started off as PDFs and that's where we got. Then we started, and this was a game changer for us. We started getting on video. And when I got on video, I remember just a huge uptick in like people buying from us. People identifying with what we did, our brand growing very, very quick. And, that was before video was something that was, a big deal. And then like it got to the point where when I do a course these days, like a brand new course, I don't even pre-record it. This, like we will go on, we will put together something that says, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do it next week. And if you want a seat to be there live and you want the replay, here's what you do, go buy. And then we'll go do the course live. And so, there was so much pre-preparation to putting something together to sell before. Now, a lot of it is, hey, what do we want to do this week that we know how to do? Cool. Let's put up a buy button. Cool. Let's write a few pieces of sales copy. Cool. And when somebody buys, we put them into a webinar that we're going to do the next week. And then we do it live. And it's, I never thought that I would be making money by doing PowerPoint presentations, and that's where we are. So that's been the evolution for me. Is it used to be a lot harder to get things out the door. Now we can decide today what we're going to do, and by next week our money's already in the bank, and we're doing the program that we wanted to do. And then people walk away happy with what they've got, and all the technology has made this stuff a lot easier. And so I would say the change for me has been very much dealing with, okay, there's a lot more people, a lot more competition out there, but my job week to week and the job of the people that I work with is a lot easier than it used to be just because of the tech.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so you touched on video there for a second. I want you to dig in that for a second. So what made you realize that was just so important? Is it just being able to put a face with a business? Or does it go a lot deeper than that? What do you think that is?
For me, it was really dumb where I figured out that video was, I said, okay, this is how much money I'm making per month with my little PDFs.
Yeah.
And I was like, who's out there doing something like what I do that's making more money than me?
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I made this list. I was like, okay, there's this cat named Brendan Burchard. Okay. There's this cat named Frank Kern. There's these 5 other people that are all making, I know they're making more money than me. They're doing a really good job. What are they doing different? And it immediately hit me. I know exactly what they look like. I know exactly what their voice is like. And then you have to kind of come down to that thing of, oh God, video is, I can't hide. I've actually got to get on a camera. But then you just do it, and that's the thing. I can go back. There's videos of me from way back that just embarrass the hell out of me right now. Some of them are still on the YouTube channel.
Don't worry. We'll be sure to link those to everyone. No problem.
I know exactly the 2 or 3 that are going to get linked probably. But I go back and look at those videos and think about how horrible they were. But I also think about how used to doing video I got as we were doing this. And I don't consider myself an expert at being on video by any means. There's so many people better than me right now. But there's a comfort level of, I feel like I can be who I am on video. And so to me, it was just looking at who is more successful than me doing something similar as what I am. What are they doing differently? And that was the one thing that I could continually wrap my mind around. And quite honestly, when I did video, it was like that. I mean, that month, it was a huge uptick.
That's crazy.
And
that's awesome.
Yeah. And so that was the thing for me. And I would love to say that, I had some genius because I'll bond with people quicker. No, it was just that.
Oh, it's beautiful. I love it. It's just like what you just said. It's just like we talk about all the time. How much time are you going to spend in the gym shooting free throws? You just keep doing it. Just get out there and do it. That's what it's all about. So that speaks to that. That's really, really good. Well, okay. So that's Serial Progress Seeker in a nutshell. A few minutes of a nutshell. Of course, we could probably literally talk about that brand for hours and hours and hours, but shift a little bit and talk to me a little bit about your thinking about specifically towards the podcast. So you've specifically focused on the podcast world. So what made you want to throw your hat into the podcasting game, and why was Serial Progress Seeker the perfect avenue to do that?
A lot of people, and I actually had this discussion with somebody this morning. They're like, what do you even, I feel like I'm too boring to be on a podcast. and I've been down that road many times where I'm like, do I have enough to talk about with podcasts? And then I'm like, it hit me that we have people paying us every week to hear me talk.
True.
And
true story.
I thought that, yeah, and so quite literally, if you don't know and you're brand new to us, every week somebody's paying us for at least one program that we do. And the vast majority of you're watching slides or you're watching me do something in a browser and you're listening to me talk you through it.
Yep.
And so the idea was with the podcast, to me, it is the perfect way to grow a business. And what I mean by that is with a podcast, even if you don't have a big podcast, even if your podcast is just starting, a podcast is the ultimate way to network with people. So I can literally pick up the phone right now and be like, hey, my name is Ben Adkins. On the Serial Progress Seeker podcast, that's our podcast. You can go listen to an episode or two here, point out one of my episodes that I like.
Yeah.
And I would love to have you as a guest. And nobody's looking at your numbers. Nobody's looking at these things. And the vast majority, 90% of people are looking at, cool, somebody thinks I'm cool enough to interview me.
God, that's so true. That's so true. You're so right.
And so where I love about podcast is no matter what kind of business you have, let's say that you're in a business, let's say you have an insurance company and you just want more leads. Well, you put together a podcast talking about, business insurance. If you're doing, the podcast isn't talking about business insurance, but let's say you offer business insurance. You literally I'm going to put together a podcast talking about business and how to run a good business. And I'm going to invite all these business owners to be on my podcast. And that's your leads. Those are the people that you want to be your customers. And so what you can really do with a podcast very quickly is you can put yourself in a position to do some cool things. Also, the reason I love podcasts, and it was, if you go back, the vast majority of episodes before we changed the format were me talking to a microphone by myself. I like to teach.
Sure.
But I don't think that that's as good as when you have somebody to talk to.
Yeah, that's true.
And so it's such a better vibe when you and me are talking to each other when we've got guests on the podcast. And so what I really, really like about a podcast, it's an opportunity to hang out with another human being and exchange ideas. And I truly believe that you can't get the best out of yourself just by talking into a microphone. I feel like you truly get the best out of yourself by having someone on the other end, kind of asking questions and adapting. All of our webinars that people pay us, the live ones that we turn into courses, they're not that great if I just sit down and record them.
Sure.
And I've kind of tested this over the years. When I just sit down and record a course, it's okay. When I sit down and record a course and I've got 100 people on the other end asking questions that I didn't think to put in the presentation, that's what turns a course into magic. And so to me, that's it. A podcast, if you do it right, puts you in a position to give out your expertise, to connect with leads, and to really expand your network in a way that is abnormal. It really is abnormal. There's no other way to expand your network and to expand your reach that sort of fits into this mindset. Because we could do a YouTube channel, and obviously we're on YouTube with the podcast. We could do a YouTube channel, and it doesn't afford you the same sort of things. And so I think that, like I said, the reason that I initially went here was like, oh, I've never done a podcast. Let's try it. We had a lot of success early on, but we didn't stick with it. Where this sort of really came into, okay, this feels right, is when we had just kind of this, hey, I accidentally walked in on these two jokers in a bar, and this is what they were talking about, and that format works. And so I think it's an insanely attractive medium if you do it right.
Yeah.
I think it's an insanely easy way to connect with people. And for everything else that we want to do in terms of like content and teaching and getting our message out there and reaching people, and even the people that we never know that we did help, I think it's a great way for us to put together what we need to put together. And like I said, it's the medium that fits me the best.
Yeah. Oh gosh. And you said several things there that really piqued my interest, but human interaction, number one, what a huge thing, especially for right now. Here we are. We both work from home, and we know a lot of people that work from home, and we'll talk about it, in the future too, but it can sometimes be a lonely life, right? So it's nice to be able to share this human interaction. But you also said the word connection, and I think that's such a big piece. Like every single business owner I know that's out there, every single marketer that I know that's out there is trying everything they can think of, whether it's sending out emails, sending out text messages, making people join lists, whatever is driving that business, they're trying to establish connection. And I think that's why this podcast thing is just so amazing, because I think it does a very, very solid job of that, and really, kind of puts your personality out there, puts the personality of the brand out there, but also really supports what your overall mission is. And that's the whole reason we do this.
Well, and I think that any business right now that wants to grow fast, even if you are a local brick and mortar business, start a podcast. And the whole sole purpose of that podcast is to interview other businesses in your town and talk to them about how they make a difference in the world or how they run their business. And what will happen really quickly is they will share it with their audience, which is local customers. Yep. They will become your customers. And if I was starting brand new, even in the chiropractic office, I would literally build in one of my rooms, or be able to transform one of my rooms into a podcasting studio. I mean, you don't need a lot of equipment, to be honest,
sure,
but I would transform my business into a podcasting studio. And literally every single week, I would be trying to meet with 2 or 3 people as guests and put together a show. There's a really cool, this is a shout out to some of my friends here in town. They run a digital agency called Polish, and amazing people, but every single week they do a podcast in conjunction with another business in town that is actually the namesake of the podcast. And that's the whole gig. They literally have people in that are good fits for their business, and the whole shtick is not only are they meeting with their client, but I'm going to share the podcast because I felt good about being interviewed as an expert on it.
That's right.
And so it's rapid spread. And like I said, it's one of those things that no matter what kind of business you are, find that angle that allows you to connect with your people. And if you do it consistently, you will explode in the growth that you have very, very quickly.
Yeah, no, I think that's so true. And so and that answers everything as to why podcasting, but why the marriage between this podcast to Serial Progress Seeker? Why is that brand the right brand for a podcast?
To me, I think the thing is we realized really quickly that right now I'm sitting in the studio, right? Like there's things about this room that were set up to be on video, right?
Sure.
But the number one thing that I realized really quickly is what is some sort of thing that we can create anywhere we go. And you gotta stick with. And I got one of my backpacks is sitting right here. How do I literally dismantle everything that I've got here, put it in that backpack, and still I'm able to create and do the things that I want to do? And so for Serial Progress Seeker, that's always the idea: is how do I get everything that I'm creating and getting my message out into the world? How do I get it in a backpack? And if it doesn't fit in the backpack, it's not something that we can do. And so podcasting, that's the thing. It doesn't matter if you're not at your house that day. We can still do the podcast. It doesn't matter if I'm at my house that day. We don't have to be together. Our guests don't have to be with us. We can always be wherever we need to be, and we can do what we need to do. Now, sometimes the background's not going to look as fancy, but that's okay. That's not the core value that we bring to the table. We're not doing something that it has to be flashy. We're doing something where as long as we're getting out good information, that's the key. And I think that that's what a lot of people mess up with this, man, is they think everything has to be as polished as the person that they're trying to emulate, right? And I get in that mode sometimes. And then I think about it. I'm like, you know what? No. Are we teaching something? Are we extending some sort of value? And if we're extending some sort of value, that's the key. And with Serial Progress Seeker, the whole mindset is, can you move and do your business anywhere? And that's why a podcast fits it perfectly, because quite literally, I can take this microphone, unplug it, and put it in the backpack. I can put my laptop in the backpack. I can take this camera, put it in the backpack, and we're set up anywhere that we need to go. Even if I didn't have this camera in particular, I could throw a little webcam in. Everything works the way we need it to work. And I think that anybody that is trying to transition out of that mindset of, oh my gosh, I have to be in this room to do the thing that makes me money, find something where you can deliver the value that you're doing, but it doesn't matter where you happen to be sitting that day. And that's where the true freedom comes from. Because I have a lot of friends that do this internet business thing, but they're still tied to a room.
Right.
They still have to be in like their video studio. They have to be in like a certain spot. And I think that's great because a lot of them do really, really well. But for the kind of business that I have, I will trade money for freedom all day. And, maybe I don't make as much money with this setup as some of my other folks that are like locked into this, this whole thing. But it's the life that I want. And at the end of the day, I think that's the thing is, can we have the life that we actually want? And that's how it all kind of ties back into Serial Progress Seeker.
No, that makes perfect sense. And you talked about it right there, extending value too. So, I mean, if you had to draw a picture of your listener to this Serial Progress Seeker podcast, who's that person look like? Who's this podcast appeal to? Who's it helping? Who's going to get that value you're talking about? Who do you see that person being?
I've always tried to we always do this. We always try to build our avatar. And the first thing they tell you is when you're building your customer avatar is to find the age and are they male or female? And I've done that before with Serial Progress Seeker. It never really works.
Yeah.
What I was able to really get a while back, and this is probably a few years back when I really came into this, it's people that are really, really skilled at something. Number one, if you don't have anything that you're really skilled at, we're probably not for you. That's all there is to it. Maybe you think we're funny. Probably not.
There's no way that's possible. Not a chance.
That's definitely not why anybody's listening to me. But I think that the thing is number one, you have to be very skilled at something. It doesn't matter what that is, but you have to have a skill that is your thing, right? So you have to have put in the time to learn a skill and to master a skill. That's the first part of who our customer avatar is. It's male, female, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you're 15 years old, doesn't matter if you're 80, 90, 100 years old. You have a skill that you've put in the work for. So you're good at something.
Yeah.
From there, you want to take that skill and make money with that skill or bring more freedom into your life with that skill by getting your expertise out using this megaphone that is the internet. And that's really who we're after. It's people that really understand something. Now, some people are like, well, Adkins, I want to sell t-shirts online. Well, here's the thing. If you're good at selling t-shirts online, you're probably really dialed in with how to put together something that people in a certain audience want to wear on their chest. That's a skill.
Yeah.
That takes time to develop. That's something that some people have built in a little more, but still you have to learn it. And so all these things really hit me as you have a skill and your core desire is, I want to make money with that skill on the internet. And I don't want to be tied into this, oh my gosh, I got to go clock in on a job. And that's really who Serial Progress Seeker is for. The people that listen to this, that's who they are. And they seem to identify with with me, with you, with everybody that's sort of in this audience, they seem to identify with each other because that's what they're after. They're looking to do more without location being a tying point.
Got it. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now, yeah, and you talked about way earlier about writing an idea you had or a thought that you had on a whiteboard. And I know that's the kind of person you are because I know you. But so take that thought and translate that to, because I know you've already thought about this because I know you. What kind of goals do you have for this podcast? What's the end goal, man? What are we trying to get to? Who, how many people are we trying to touch? What's our metric?
This is where people are going to make fun of me, and that's okay, because it's actually very big. When we first started this podcast a while back, my goal was to be, a top at the marketing world, and that lost its luster to me really quickly. I really didn't have any desire to just be at the top of the marketing and the entrepreneurial podcast. Yes, of course we want that, but that seems small to me. Where I really started to get this is we're in a very shifting world right now. And I feel like a lot of the world's pain comes from the fact that a lot of people are still stuck with what our parents had. That was how work was. That's what your job was, your career was. And so, I fully believe that Serial Progress Seeker, as it stands right now, its job is to be one of the biggest podcasts in the world, just because I believe that our message is something that a lot of people can really use. Not because, let's listen to Ben and Marshall talk. Like, who cares about that? Yeah. Like, it's not about us. It's about what is this world. And so a lot of our goal is, it's not just about, okay, what are we talking about today? What are we interested in today? But, this world that we live in, I've been doing this for 10 years. I know all these people that this is their gig. Some of them, are a few years behind me and like their journey. A lot of them are a lot of years in front of me, though. Yeah. How do we bring those voices in to show people all the ways that you can do this? And so the mission of Serial Progress Seekers, I do believe, like, we are the Jordan brand of the entrepreneurial space. And I want us to be one of the biggest podcasts out there just in general, because I want business to be fun again. Like, when you look at the top podcasts right now, I by the way, there's so many good podcasts. Please don't think this is a knock on any podcast, but a lot of the really good podcasts out there right now are escapism. And it's a way to escape from what your gig is. And, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I got plenty of TV shows and podcasts that I listen to all the time, and I enjoy them. But it's escapism. And I think that, what I want to create with Serial Progress Seekers, I want to create something that's entertaining in a way that, like, I can do something with this to grow my life, to be more free, but that it's also fun to listen to. And so, what I really want to do with this, and, this is where people are going to laugh and be like, okay, you're not going to make an entrepreneurial podcast one of the biggest podcasts in the world, Adkins. Come on. And I think we can. But I think that the idea is we want this podcast to reach an audience that it normally would not reach. And I see a wave coming. I see more interest in people doing their own thing, having their own Etsy store, having their own t-shirt shop, teaching how to shoot free throws, but doing it from home or doing it from their own basketball court, that millions of people want to learn those things. Like, there's so many things that people sitting at home right now know that they don't realize they can make money with. And my goal is to get this podcast in front of millions and millions of people so that we can show them, hey, you don't have to get up and suffer through this gig that you really don't love. If you love it, keep going. Yeah. If you don't love it, build what you want to build, and the internet is there to carry you into a financial place so that you can do those things. And with that financial place and being able to do it, a lot of freedom comes with it. And I think that's the mission, man. It's like, we want to do something that an entrepreneurial podcast has never done before. We're going to do that by bringing in a lot of friends, because it can't just be about us. We're not smart enough. I mean, there's all there is to it. But I do believe that we understand something is changing. There is a wave coming, and people are going to need information. And if we can make it fun to learn this stuff, then it's not so damn painful to build the business, which is why I think a lot of people haven't done it yet. They know this exists, but it just seems so painful and so boring to them. And it's not. Like, it's a lot of fun when you understand the mechanics of it.
Man, no kidding. Yeah, that's all extremely, extremely exciting. This has been really good for me, just because I really enjoy what feels like it's like I'm getting a peek behind my own curtain. Like you and I have been talking and interacting in this world for quite a while, and this is just kind of a different spin on it. It's all a different spin on trying to get to that same heartbeat of the serial progress seeker mission. And I think there's heartbeat is the right word too, because there is so much heart behind it. I think it's extremely noble. It's extremely positive. It comes from a really good place of wanting to help people and help businesses and help marketers and help entrepreneurs. And I'm just excited to be along for this ride and see where this thing goes, man. I think the mission that you've set forward here not only has legs, but it's just freaking good, man. It just makes me feel good, and I hope that it's going to be something that makes other people feel good, because like I said, I think it's a big, important, noble thing that we're doing.
Well, I do too, but but this is the caveat. The caveat is we have no idea. We still don't know what we're doing exactly.
No,
and I think that's great. I think that a lot of people out there think, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do this. Well, we don't know what we're doing with this.
No.
Like, we just know kind of the direction that we want to go and who we want to affect. And we're trying to be as consistent as possible with this podcast so that we figure it out along the way. And I think that if I can get anything across to, the people, because every day, man, I get to hear a story from somebody that says, I'm tired of this restaurant job that I've got. I'm tired of being an accountant. The way that I was told being an accountant had to work. I'm tired of being a chiropractor. I'm tired of doing this. I love the people that I work with, but I'm tired of doing it this way. And I think that like what we're trying to really do and figure out, what is the best way to get that message out. It's just that's the advice that I always give people that are saying, I'm like, here are the 5 things that you need to do to get started, and just start leaning in that direction. And sometimes it's as simple as this. Hey, just go record a TikTok video every day telling me about this one thing that you do. And along the way, you're going to see what actually connects with an audience. And that's when just do more of that one thing once you figure it out. But it's about starting. And really, the whole vibe of the Serial Progress Seeker podcast right now, because we do want to have a good archive. I know you and I of like where we were versus where we're going.
Yeah.
The whole vibe right now is, how can we be as consistent as possible with talking about these things that we think are incredibly important to this generation, so that we get it out there. And along the way, we hope to actually figure out what the hell we're doing, so that we can do it better. And anybody listening, those are the things that we want to hear, is like, what do you actually dig about this? And so that's the vibe. And I think it's imperfect action, and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I feel like you lead with the heart, man. You're not going to go wrong. So I think it's all good stuff. So thanks for the peek behind the curtain there. That's good stuff.
Absolutely.